Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we take an in depth look at a piece of recent nerd entertainment. And we break down what's good about it, what's bad about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, what the messages, themes, tones are, etc., which means we spoil it, hence the name Spoiler Chat. Tonight we are going to be looking at the recent Netflix series, season 2 of the Netflix series, Love, Death, and Robots. So if you haven't seen that and you don't want it spoiled, then I suggest you find something else to watch for the next hour or so. If you have seen it or you don't mind spoilers, hang in. Give us questions in the chat and observations. We've got a bunch of people in the chat already. Awesome. Um, Before we get to saying hi to all you folks, and I'll just go hi. We'll give you by your name in a second. Let me say, I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter as a cosplay photographer. Maybe does it count if I haven't done any in a year? Um, on Facebook and Burley underscore adopter on Twitter. Joining me tonight, let's start with the. Oh gosh, you're both in front of a lot of books. Let's start with the non hat wearing librarian, Greg, if you would.
You could just go with my doppelganger, and we'll all know immediately who you're referring to. Wait, hold on a second.
There we go.
Uh, uh.
I trimmed my beard last week, so
I actually have not trimmed mine in a while because I'm doing an event as Hagrid tomorrow night in New Hampshire with the Fisher Cats.
oh yeah.
So
Cool.
let it go for the full Hagrid scruff. Hi everybody, Greg Snyder, aka Wonder Llama Photography, and incredibly enough, back to Wonder Llama cosplay tomorrow night. Associate producer here at Nerd Caliber. I'm just going to go with the associate because that sounds more badass overall somehow. And
Editor.
yes, editor, producer, editor. I'm just going with the associate.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. There's Granite State Comic Con, if anybody is familiar with that. There's a small local con that happens in the fall. It's wonderful. No, it's a great place to meet all your friends. And they do an event every year with the minor league baseball team in Manchester, New Hampshire. So we've got a small Harry Potter group. We've got a bunch of Marvel folks coming out tomorrow night. So if you're in Southern New Hampshire, you enjoy cosplay and/or baseball, and you're in the mood. I don't know what tickets cost, but it's minor league baseball, so it's bound to be fairly affordable, and it's supposed to be a beautiful night. So come on down.
Awesome. And the man who started the entire shindig, the grand empire that we're here as a part of, Manny, if you would.
Hello, my name is Manny. I'm the founder of Nerd Caliber, co-owner with my man Rodney here. And if you like what you see, please support us. We have merchandise in the bottom. We have a Patreon page. Please continue to support us. And let us know what you think in the comments below.
Absolutely. And so, welcome, folks. Alice Catriona Malfoy. Interesting family. Welcome to the show. Lemonade, welcome to the show. Riley Redmond, welcome to the show. CG Vlogs, hello. And welcome to the show. Let me take a quick gander over at the Twitches and at the Facebooks and see if we've got anybody there. Looks like we're pretty much not live on Facebook because I got interrupted in the middle of it, folks. So while I do some cutting and pasting and really quickly going next and then go live and turn on, I will just keep blathering on here, folks, for another second. And there we go. Now we're live on Facebook as well. My apologies to all our Facebook fans.
Can we have the girl from Ipanema just queued up so that if you need to stall for time, we could just put on a little bossa nova in the background, like we're riding an elevator?
I would love to do that. For anybody who's a real music nerd, I can't remember. It might be Polyphonic. One of the YouTube channels does an amazing breakdown of just how, even for bossa nova, just how weird that particular song is. And it's, if you're a music fan, a jazz fan in particular, a bossa nova fan in particular, it's deep. It's really deep. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is Love, Death, and Robots. But it could. Which is a series on Netflix, started in 2019. It's a series of individual, very short, usually around 15-minute, standalone episodes So it becomes an anthology series essentially about science fiction themes, science fiction stories, adaptations of existing science fiction stories, in many cases, sometimes originals. Um, the first one had in additional some horror elements, not just science fiction. Um, season 2, there are no overt horror elements to speak of. Well, sort of. I guess it's hard to say. One of them maybe. Um, but yeah, so it took a break, obviously, because of COVID. And as we were just having this discussion earlier, that affected the number of episodes in season 2. There are only 8, where there were 18 in season 1. Now, what that means is that you can watch season 2 in the length of a movie. I mean, it's essentially 2 hours worth of viewing time. And so it. What else do we need to know about it? It was created by Tim Miller. Deadpool, the original Deadpool, and it adapts some very new stuff and some classic science fiction works, particularly this season. So what we're going to do with this, because it's an anthology, we can't really get into what we would normally say. What did you like about? Because then we'd be doing it 8 times, and that's way too long. Even if these are really short. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around and say, what particular episodes did you think were the best out of the 8? Maybe keep it to 2 or 3. And why? What worked for you about that? And then we'll go back and say, okay, which ones do you think they really missed on, and why? And then we'll get talking about how it works as an overall series compared to season 1 on its own, and so on.
Beautiful.
So, Greg, since you just spoke up,
sure.
Let's have you start.
So let's see. I'll go in kind of, I guess, reverse order of my favorites. I'd say number 3 was the episode Ice. It's got a very snow crash kind of. Basically, the episode is modded people on a somewhat strange planet, far distant, far future. Where the modded folks are racing against something they call, what do they actually call? They're basically ice whales.
Right. I think they call them ice whales.
Yeah. The animation is beautiful. The ice whales in particular, when they actually breach through the ice, are stunning, absolutely spectacular. Hey, we got that queued up. It's beautiful. Really, really like the animation style. It's very Neo Tokyo, kind of what you'd expect for something that's reminiscent of Neil Stevenson, William Gibson, that kind of style. Thought it worked pretty well with an interesting, it could have just been literally a bunch of teenagers racing whales and it would have been cool, but a cool conflict between a modded younger brother and an unmodded older brother, the typical sibling rivalry stuff there. My number 2 would have to be All Through the House. This was, I'm not entirely sure, there's really no robots in this one per se. So I guess it's, I don't know, love or death. You could slot it either way there. But this was a genius take on Krampus after a fashion. It's, 2 little kids Christmas Eve hear what they think is Santa Claus. They come downstairs and it's, what's in the house is not exactly old Jolly St. Nick. It's something, if you took No Face from Spirited Away and you crossed it with the Xenomorph Queen from Alien, that's who's handing out presents in their basement, in their living room. And one of the great all-time sign-off lines that I could think of, and I'm only going to say this because we are spoilers here tonight, as the 2 little children literally back in bed with the covers pulled up to their noses, trembling, the sister says to the brother, "What would have happened if we'd been bad?" And that just boom, absolutely got me. So loved that one. And my favorite of all the episodes was the first one up in the rotation, automated customer service. It's like if Wall-E was animated by Bill Plimpton. The graphic style, um, totally unexpected, funny as hell. Uh, Written by an author named John Scalzi, who I'm a huge fan of. I had the fortune to interview him a few years ago at a con. Super nice guy. Um, yeah, the animation style is really gonzo and genuinely different. Um, the plot was reminiscent of Wall-E after fashion. It's it's your little household helper robot um, that you hit the wrong thing by accident and it goes into hyperkill mode. And this woman is on hold with customer service, and things go from bad to worse to much, much, much worse, as you'd expect. And the banality of what it's like to sit on hold for an extended period of time with customer service really is amplified when you're trying to find out how to deactivate a murder bot. So clever premise, great animation, really, really well done. And then, a nod to like Terminator 2, where Linda Hamilton is driving off in the Jeep at the end. Just subtle little nods to things like that. So those are my top three.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was trying to pin down this animation or this artwork style was so incredibly familiar to me, and I couldn't remember for the life of me where it was. And you're right. Was it Bill Plimpton?
Bill Plimpton.
Has done a lot of work for Rolling Stone, for all kinds of magazines. Fantastic illustrator. Um, Thank you. It was really getting to me why I
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't pin this down.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying to think of the name of it. He had a series on, I can't think of the name of it. He had a series on, I want to say MTV a while ago.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Yeah, I remember that. That was a strange
it'll
series,
come to
but I
me.
enjoyed it.
I'll dive back in because his IMDb credits are extensive. But he has a very, if you've ever gone to any of like the Spike and Mike's midnight animation festivals, there's always a Bill Plimpton short crammed in there because he can say more in a 3-minute short than most people can in a 4-hour extended movie.
yeah, very cool. I like that a lot. Carola Correa, welcome to the show. Um, and again, we're spoiling. It says spoilers above, spoiler below. We're spoiling Love, Death, and Robots second season on Netflix. So if you haven't seen it and you don't like spoilers, thanks for stopping in, but you should probably go somewhere else. If you don't mind spoilers or you have seen it and want to chat about it, hang around. We're just getting started. Manny, your top episode.
Wow, this is tough because all of them, the animation's great, and each one has something to say that you kind of left pondering and thinking about. So I'll just pick three that I like that are very different from Greg's. Um, I'll start with the Pop Squad. The best way I can explain it is that it's in the future, um, immortality is discovered by looks like by the wealthy, but they have to keep population under control, or else you can't have billions and billions of or trillions of immortal people. Maybe they're afraid of resources. I don't think they really said why. It just is. And it deals with one of the detectives. Trying to remember if they ever said his name. Briggs, I think. Um, who has to kill two kids as part of his job. He's sort of a detective, population control, management. Again, it doesn't really say, but again, that's what his job. But it haunts him, and as he's dating this girl, and they're just part of this elite society, it's starting to gnaw on him. So he just ends up finding a mystery, a linked mystery where more of these families, these poor families, are having kids, and and then at the end he finds one and wants to talk, wants to understand why they're having kids, why they're choosing to give up immortality to have kids. And it's an answer. He never really finds the answer, but it's something. His guilt conscience is bothering him, and then it ends very tragically. His partner finds out, and they have a shootout, and they both kill each other. Um, I graphics are great, and again, there's a lot of like themes crammed in here. There's a lot of different like I guess you say tropes. Um, I think Greg, when we were talking earlier, mentioned there's a little bit of Children of Men. I mean, there's just a Blade Runner. There's a lot of little different things here and there in that episode. Snow in the Desert. I think it's a fantastic short. Lots of action. Um, some sort of desert planet. There's a bounty on a character named Snow who's able to regenerate and is also immortal. And everyone wants to have his DNA. And he makes this woman named Harold, I believe her name is. Um, he's not saying why she's trying to save him, and she just tells him that she works for the CIA, I believe, CIA of Earth at that time, um, and she wants to help him. I guess these other blind hunters are after him. Lots of great fight scenes, and you get to find out the twisted thing is that she's also immortal, but for a different reason. She's what looks like an well, I believe she said not an android, but a synthesoid or something like that. And they fall in love, and I thought that was a real nice story. Straight to the point. Um, the tall grass is a very creepy one. Um, I I'm not sure where this takes place. Maybe to me, I felt like 1900s a little bit.
Doesn't
Um,
matter.
like early 1900s, late 1800s. But it was hard to pin down. But again, the idea is that a train in the middle of the night just stops suddenly. This random guy says, "So you know, what? I'm gonna take a walk in these tall grass," and he sees something, and he starts following this light there, and then he finds out, oh wait, there's monsters everywhere trying to eat him, and he's trying to get back to the train in time before it leaves, and he's lost, and these things are hunting him down. He sees, I don't know what they are, like these faceless monsters that when you get too close, these horrible mouths just open up trying to eat him, and he's saved at the end as the train is leaving by the I guess ticket holder, ticket conductor.
Like the conductor, yeah.
Yeah,
He's just identified as Railman in the
and
credits.
and you get to find out that this train always stops here randomly, and who these monsters are. Maybe they're lost souls, or they give some a lot of different reasons, and you're left pondering like what did you just watch? So these are my three favorites.
Now,
So
I sorry, just real quickly,
yeah,
I like Tallgrass a lot. The animation style was unique. Um, Totally not how I thought that was going to end.
Mm,
Um, I I thought there was going to be a what a twist,
mm,
and the railman was actually going to be feeding passengers to the bad guys out in the woods, or the grass rather. So it was a little surprising and almost a little bit of a letdown for me when he didn't. He like came out and saved him from the bad, the big bads, and pulled him on, and then had this, the explanation of what he thought.
yeah,
Um,
it comes across a very classic fairy tale type of
yeah,
thing. Pretty much like it's almost feel like the simple lesson is if you're meant to stay somewhere, stay there. Don't go wandering in places that you're not too sure of, especially if you have a responsibility to get back to it or something like that.
yeah.
and when the conductor says "Don't wander," maybe you should not wander.
Yeah.
So Harry Brady, welcome back to the show. Again, we're spoiling Love, Death, and Robots season 2. We're just about to get into my top few that I think I liked the best out of all 8. So if you've seen it and you have similar opinions, let us know. And anybody else in there, let us know what you think your top choices are as to which episodes were the best out of these this season's 8. So mine are very similar to Manny's, and they were there were close calls to automated customer service was really close to being in one of my top 3, and if for no other reason than the really interesting animation. But I look at these from a science fiction story standpoint, and from those I agree 100% with Greg about Ice. I really like the way that it takes a very personal story and expands it out into just a sort of broader story about the actions of people in this world. It's not deep or significant. There's nothing destroying the planet. Nobody's going to get eaten or killed. It's it uses that personal story and its expansion into the larger group of kids to basically tell you everything you need to know about what this world is about and what it's like for the people in it. Now that there are essentially two classes of humans, the modded and the unmodded. And I love those kind of stories. I'm a big fan of that, which is not to say I don't like things that have a lot of action, but I like science fiction stories that let the world play out through the actual actions of the characters in the story. And I think they did a really good job of doing that in an in an animated story with Ice. Whereas I think in some cases that's really tough to do. Well, in a lot of cases it's tough to do. And in some of these particular episodes, they didn't quite succeed. So my other one, I'm going to go also with the Snow in the Desert. Again, for very similar reasons. There's very little exposition other than at the end, kind of, where you have the conversation between Snow and Herald about Herald or Hitald?
It's Hirald.
Yeah, Herald. About what each of them are, but most of why Snow is hiding on this desert planet, what happens when people sort of find out who he is, all of that is played out through the story, and in this case with a lot more action. This one is very much like Greg said, a sort of a military bang 'em up, sort of story. Even though none of them technically are military. I mean, you get the impression Snow may have been ex-military, but the bounty hunters certainly aren't. And it turns out Herald isn't. Herald is an agent for sure, but not necessarily a soldier per se. And so for that reason, I really liked it. I also love the animation. I love the world design. I thought it was very cool. And then I'm going to go back to Manny, and Pop Squad. Is another one where I love the world concept. I loved how personal the story was. It was a little bit tropey. It leaned heavily on Blade Runner. It leaned very heavily on Altered Carbon, just without the resleeving. I mean, but it's still immortals, rich people and poor people, and never their worlds shall meet in any good way. And Children of Men and so on. It also leaned even heavier into the noir side of things than the original Blade Runner did. The design aesthetic is really noir in this. And they're immortals, and they've lived for who knows how long. And they can dress up like however they want, I guess. At that point in a science fiction world, to say that everybody's going to dress up with like Nehru collar jackets, I don't think so. So those are my three top. I really like the animation styles as much as I like the more arty animation style of In the Tall Grass and Automated Customer Service. I don't have a problem with the more CG look of Pop Squad, and In the Desert, Snow in the Desert. So those are my choices and the reasons why I particularly like those. So now, folks, Greg, let's start with which ones. Let's keep it to two tops that you thought really just didn't work. Or maybe they worked, but you just didn't like. Let's put it that way.
Right. So I'll do one of each, actually. So I agree. I really like Pop Squad a lot. I really like Snow in the Desert a lot. I just liked other ones more. Life Hutch was interesting. It worked. I think it was a clever story. The way he outsmarted the malfunctioning, maintenance bot turned murder bot. I guess there's a consistent through line here. Was clever, but it it was all uncanny valley all the time for me. Pop Squad very similarly as well, and Snow in the Desert a little bit. But so Life Hutch was clever, it worked, but I didn't really care for it that much. Um, the one that I did not like, didn't think it worked, didn't like the animation, didn't like the uncanny valley, was the one they ended with, which was called the Drowned Giant. It was kind of a morose, maudlin, kind of navel gazing English scientist who probably read way too much Jonathan Swift once upon a time, because it's got like a reverse Lilliputian thing going on here. Well, it actually, so this guy is basically a Bob the Nakian. So the story is basically no backstory whatsoever. A giant that would be roughly the size of there you go. So like the size of a 10-story building, give or take, inexplicably just on a beach somewhere in the UK. Um, and it goes from fascination and fear to this is just another thing that's floating around. And then next thing you know, people are like drawing graffiti on it, and then they take it apart, and then people are using the bones for, window ornaments. Um, Interesting concept, but just nothing about it works. The giant just it made no sense. Sometimes you do need a little backstory. Most of these, Pop Squad, I didn't need to know how we got to this future state. It just existed. It worked in an encapsulation of what's happening. The Drowned Giant, I'm like, where's this thing coming from? What's happening here? Um, I also found the voiceover of the main character very navel gazy, someone who studied English lit much too hard and drank the Kool-Aid in in Swarthmore English lit class. It just didn't work. The whole thing felt morose. It felt very anticlimactic after episodes with trying to outrun space whales and Snow in the Desert with these insane guns, and the headshots were like, oh, whoa, holy shit, these are serious headshots here, like video game level of ultra violence. Um, Action packed or horror or humor packed, and to end on this very down note of like this guy just philosophizing about a dead body for all intents and purposes. Just nothing about it worked for me.
Yep. Yeah, I'll get into that too, but I'll agree. Um, so those are two. Many. Which ones do you think either didn't work for you or just really weren't that good?
Mine's the same as Greg's. Is the last two. Those Life Hutch. Okay, it was a little exciting. This soldier gets trapped in this base was supposed to keep him safe for a while during the battle, and then there's this mechanical dog of sorts that malfunctions and starts attacking him, and he's trying to survive. I mean, he's already exhausted already from the space battle he was in, and now he has to deal with this. Um, the problem with that is that at the end of it, I feel like okay, this was a cool fight scene, but unlike the other ones, I didn't leave with like a theme or something. This could have been taken out of any movie. The way I felt, it just I felt like it was just someone that's wanted to do an action scene of some sort. That's
Yep.
what this clip was. Um, the Drowned Giant. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, okay, is no one else freaking out that there's a giant, a huge, huge giant washed up on the beach? I mean, where's the army? Where's I don't know, like where's the coverage, and I was very I was I was very confused by that. The only thing I liked about the Drowned Giant was this weird, interesting theme that I wish it would have been used for something else. But that there's almost this idea that something very almost magical, wonderful, crazy just happened, and uh, we're not aware of how what or strange it is, and then we just kind of like it just becomes the background of our lives. You know, maybe it'll be something that bring in tourists in or something like that. I thought that theme was interesting, and I wish I could see that someplace else because I don't think it
Mm,
worked with this
yeah.
because it's just that's a little bit too miraculous, too crazy, too
Yeah.
magical for just us to ignore. I mean that's maybe done something more subtle might have worked better.
Yeah.
If
You
they
know,
got any more subtle, we'd all be
It,
asleep.
yeah.
I mean,
it felt like Manny. That's actually kind of one of the things that I thought as well, and it's an interesting theme that this did not do a good job of. Is the human nature where something is so incredible, it goes from miraculous to mundane. Something
Mhm.
that's so out of any human experience. Holy crap, what's going on here? And next thing you know, people are like picnicking his ear, and then they're carving up the bones for their shops. And what could be more mundane and everyday than that?
Maybe maybe
Um,
maybe this is their this it's this writer's take of how we view like whales when they wash up to the beach, or things like that. Sea creatures
yeah,
that are they're actually pretty wondrous if you think about it. But when we just treat it like I don't know, we just don't. I don't know, something about humanity. We don't think about things like that. Like we see something washed up in the beach, we want to take pictures of it and things like that. And we should be like, wait, maybe we should push this creature back in the ocean. Should we call for help? What can we do? And so there's some stories like that, but there's a lot of stories I see that where creatures watch up from the ocean and we just let it die for
yeah.
entertainment.
yeah.
Um,
And
maybe
the other
maybe
thing,
that's
sorry,
the point.
could be, yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about, and you raised the point about like why is nobody freaking out about this? It made me draw a sharp parallel to one of my all-time favorite movies, The Iron Giant, where a giant literally washes up on a beach in Maine rather than the UK. And oh God, yeah, the army shows up toot sweet. Not entirely so much to protect people, but they want to weaponize it, not surprisingly. But that was an appropriate response to a giant mechanical robot washing up on shore. Whereas this response to a 200-foot tall person washing up dead was like, oh, neat, let's climb up its nose.
Yeah. So I wish I could turn this around and say something or pick different particular episodes, but I'm with you guys 100%. Um, I liked. I read Life Hutch. I can't remember how many decades ago. I'm a Harlan Ellison fan. I love Harlan. It's based on a Harlan Ellison story, and it was an interesting story. It didn't necessarily as a short story need to expand much beyond what you saw because it's a short story. Um, in this case, the flashbacks to the moments to the fights, the space fighter fights that Michael B. Jordan's character is undergoing before his ship gets damaged and he crashes on this planet, which luckily has one of these emergency life hutch stations on it. Um, in the story, as I recall, it's used to sort of build his state of mind about whether or not he's going to fight, whether he thinks he can fight against this robot, this thing that he has as a human probably has no chance to kill, and then ultimately decides to. You don't get that in this short story, in this version of the short story, in this the animated CG animated version. It's kind of like, okay, well, that's interesting. Here's in the flashback, so we get reasons to see cool space battles. Okay, they're cool. But then it just wraps up. He wins. He sits down at the station, which is already transmitting, his signal. As soon as somebody walks in,
SOS.
his SOS. As soon as somebody walks in, it transmits a rescue signal, and so he's just got to sit there and survive the robot. Now that he survived the robot, there's really nothing to tell. They don't show anybody showing up, even though it's confirmed that people are on their way. There's no real resolution. He just sits down at the desk where all the stuff is. I'm like, okay. And this is just a personal thing. It didn't play for me the first 3 times. It would get about a third of the way through or ultimately I managed to force it to about 2/3 of the way through, but it kept crashing. No other episode did that. And finally, I had watched all of these when they came out a month and a half ago now. And I just finished this one today because I wasn't sure it was going to play. So that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, but even then, that doesn't excuse the simplicity of this minimal story. And yeah, there is so much to unpack in The Drowned Giant. It's written by J.G. Ballard. If you're not familiar with J.G. Ballard wrote some of the most disturbing fiction ever put into print. Crash, The Atrocity Exhibition, this is from Ballard's earlier period. Apparently, as I recall, his wife died, and that's what sort of drove him off the deep end into writing really transgressive sex and death and violence stories like Crash and Atrocity Exhibition. But this is in his earlier period where he was writing speculative fiction and science fiction. He's always been more speculative fiction than science fiction. And the story, it works as a story because it's essentially a reverie. It's a tone poem. It's not a narrative. I mean, it has an end because the narrator sees the giant when it, or gets the report that a giant has been washed up. And it has an end where he discusses, the nature of whether this was even real, as the giant is essentially completely gone, but for, bits of bone and so on, and not bone, that are being, kept by people around the area. And so it's a reverie on, death and recycling and decomposition and the nature of the circle of life, and at the end he even says that a lot of people in the town are not even really remembering that it was a giant. There were a lot of people who were saying that, oh yeah, there's some, it was like a whale or something. So we're not even sure that this happened. And again, that's a very J.G. Ballard kind of thing. That this might have all have been just some sort of, mass hallucination by people, and it could have been a whale. So sure, that works if you're reading it and you can get like really deep into the story and it's like, oh wow, my head. You don't have to be stoned. It helps, I'm sure. I don't get stoned, but it could. You try to do that as a movie or as a animated or even live action piece. There's a reason why the more philosophical and speculative works that inspire science fiction works, particularly that inspire movies, turn into action movies, is because you can't portray that properly in any sort of visual medium, because it takes place all in the description by the author of what's going on. And even where this relies entirely on the narration of Stephen, I think is the guy's name. So you've kind of got the author's voice right there all the time anyway. Still doesn't work because you've got this visual stuff where you're looking at it going, ooh, how's this going to look? What are we going to see? What's going to happen? Why aren't there military helicopters? You don't think about that when you're reading the story because the guy is really placing you in this feel with his words, with the way he puts you in a mood. It's a lot tougher to do in a movie or any sort of visual medium. So, kudos for them having the balls to try to adapt a J.G. Ballard story. Somebody's going to do it right. I mean, frankly,
I can't believe this is the same guy who wrote was it Empire from the Sun?
Empire of the Sun.
Well,
Empire of the Sun is essentially autobiographical. It's the story. He was born in Shanghai. Ballard was, and it's a story of the Japanese invasion and his parents being put into internment camps in Shanghai, and how eventually they all got out. So it's Semi-autobiographical isn't exactly right because it's much closer to a full autobiography, but there are also fictionalized elements in it, so it's majorly autobiographical, if that's a term. Um, but if you've ever seen any of the adaptations of Crash, the story of people who get sexually turned on by the destruction of human bodies in a car crash, then yeah, exactly. Then you know just how weird this person's worldview is. Um, but yeah, so that for me that was a hard miss. It's easy to see why they missed it. It's not so easy to see why they missed the Harlan Ellison stuff. I mean, that could really have been a laydown. I mean, that really is a self-contained, tight, action-filled story, and they just kind of pooched it. So, so as a whole, what do we think about season 2 as compared to season 1, or just as a product in general? Greg.
Compared to season 1, I found it to be a letdown. I had great hopes after automated customer service because it was so funny and so gonzo and so over the top, as were many of the episodes, quite a few of the episodes in season 1, that I thought it was going to be that same sort of gonzo funny stuff and then some really weird sci-fi stuff and then other stuff mixed in. It wasn't. That was the high point for me. Obviously, it's all very subjective. I think actually, so I'm looking at the IMDb page. Automated customer service, 2 thumbs up. Ice, 2 thumbs up. Pop Squad, thumb and a half up. Snow in the Desert, thumb and a half up. And then from there, just kind of slope downward to Drowned Giant, which was the last one. I found, I liked Pop Squad a lot, and I liked the story. I liked the themes. The animation I found off-putting. It's very Uncanny Valley. It needed to be way, way, way more CG realistic or way more animated. Snow in the Desert, to a similar extent as well. It felt like a video game. Although for anybody of a certain age, you'll know exactly what I mean. When he's standing on the cliff, I think, Rodney, the photo you had, the screen grab you had for that, I'm looking over the desert there, and I'm like, oh, is he going to Bartertown? Are we going to see Tina Turner in a minute? Auntie Entity, bring it on. No, there was none of that. How did it work as a whole? I don't think there was a whole. It was just a bunch of, it felt like Netflix gave a budget to a bunch of different creators, didn't really give them a remit or a log line or try and ruminate on the nature of life and death. Although there certainly was a lot of that, and I just picked that out of thin air. It felt like a bunch of individual stories and not like an anthology. I mean, a really good fantasy anthology, sci-fi anthology, whether it's novellas or short stories, the editor picks stories that complement each other. They may be radically different, but in some way or another, they complement each other. Neil Gaiman is great at it. George R.R. Martin is great at that. None of this hung together. It was just a bunch of disparate episodes that were varying from really funny to really clever to, oh, how soon is this over?
Start at 13 minutes and it's 12 minutes to go.
I
Yay.
think, you know what, I think the biggest thing I could say compared season 1 to season 2 was the first season. It's Netflix. All 18 episodes are available as soon as it drops. We rationed it out over many nights. Instead of binging and watching all of them or 50% and then the rest of them the next night, we watched like 2 and we're like, oh my God, this is so good. I don't want to watch all these in the same night. I want to, So we, 18 episodes, we probably watched it over the span of 4 nights, 5 nights. This, it's 8 episodes. They're about 12 minutes each, so it was a fairly quick end to end. But I didn't feel like stopping after the second or third episode because I wanted to, wait until tomorrow, the way you do with really good episodes of stuff that you can watch all at once.
Valid. Manny?
This almost the same opinion. This felt like,
All right.
all right, if season one was a year of school, season two was summer school, um, or just, or not even a full season. It feels like it was just a addendum, in a sense. Like these are the if you bought a DVD and these are the extra scenes or extra episodes that we included.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me. I mean, um, they were good. You know, these are really good sci-fi pieces, most of them, and I am concerned the fact that this was their second season, and I'm worried that is not as strong as the first one. So I'm worried that this may not continue, and I think this show should definitely continue. I want to see more these short. It's not too many great sci-fi shows, in my opinion. You know, we have a zillion channels, but very little good sci-fi shows, in my opinion. Um, but sorry, I'm ranting. Um, but yeah, that's what it felt like, really. I mean, season one still has some really great episodes that still stick out to me. I think my favorite is Three Robots by John Scalzi as well.
Hmm.
You know, and I keep thinking that wow, that must have been like a half an hour long. No, it's only 12 minutes. I agree with you, Greg. So the season one, I couldn't like watch them all at once because each almost like at least every episode is kind of heavy. So I kind of have to like stop and okay, I need to think about what I just watched, and because I just can't jump to something else, and it's just also another deep 12 minutes of stuff, and I just need the time to decompress what I just watched and think about it. Um, but yeah, season two is good, and I definitely want people to watch it, but it definitely nothing. I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to season one.
So, to allay one of your concerns, Manny, at the end of the trailer for season two, they confirmed season three coming in 2022.
Okay.
Now that season two is out and it's getting, maybe mixed reviews, who knows whether they'll live up to that? But it's been put out there that you know, in about a year we'll get another season. Um, uh, so yeah, it's not as good as season one. There is no single episode that is good as the best of season one, and there are episodes that are worse than the worst of season one. It has a tone. Now, in this case, I think I might disagree to some extent with Greg's point about the idea of it not being an anthology. It has a tone. The problem is the tone is kind of bleak.
Yeah, that's
Other
fair.
than, well, even to some extent, he plays it for funny, but the murder bot in automated customer service, ICE. While it's a fascinating story, it's set at night in what may be a permanent night on an ice world. It's bleak as hell. Even though the story is actually kind of uplifting about two brothers who kind of connect even more, because of this race, even though they're widely separated by one being modded and the other not. Um, and all through that, sure, there's a sense of you know, Snow may have found a permanent companion, you know, um, in Herald, but still, it's a story of somebody who literally has had to fight like almost every moment of his existence, uh, just to stay in existence. And then it gets all the way down to just like, yeah, let me slit my wrist now and join the giant. God. um, and apologies for making fun of suicide ideation.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just not. There isn't the excitement of the season one episode of the farmers fighting against the alien bugs, or the vampire story, where the guys with the dynamite are just blasting the hell out of everything. Um,
Hmm.
there's none of that sense of fun and excitement, but there is even more of the sort of downtones of some of the episodes that were in season one. You
Yep.
know, this is like all down for the most part.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that about bleakness. Yeah, that is, if there is any through line, it's bleakness.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I kind of put that in my head, but I actually do remember watching it. And I'm like, man, that episode was dark. I hope the next one's funny. And they weren't. I mean, except for, all through the house, 2/3 of the way through, halfway through, whatever. That one was at least, bright and funny, and had a great spin on classic. Not a creature was stirring. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. There we go.
Yeah.
Everything else was very like tonally dark, plot wise dark, bleak. I mean, shit, Pop Squad could get any more bleak than that.
Right.
It's one of those instances where you're like, you wish you were one of the dead people, because, the living, whether you're up top or down below, pretty much sucks. Yeah, it's dark.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and like many, you should watch it for the ones that really work well. And because it is only 8 episodes, you can kind of blast right through the ones that don't. I mean, you should watch them to determine for yourself whether you don't like them. But, it's 13 minutes of your life. So, I watch YouTube videos every day that are longer than that. So,
I do want to say that even the worst episodes have some good in it. I'd rather watch Drowned Giant at least twice than watch the whole season of Blood of Zeus again.
oh God. Agreed. Hard agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You could be forced to watch. Let's see. I don't know. What if there were 9 episodes or 10 or whatever at a half an hour each? Yeah. So you could watch basically 3 movies worth of real crap, or 1 movie's worth of creatively animated stuff where sometimes the stories work and sometimes they don't. All right, so that's it, folks. That wraps it up. Let's see, our record keeping, our bookkeeping here. We are going to be doing Monday No Nerd Caliber, and we will be talking about our top 3 Pixar movies and our bottom 1. And the reason we're doing Pixar is because, skipping over Nerd Week Live on Tuesday, next Thursday, this show, Full Fat Spoiler Chat, will be about Luca, the just about to drop Pixar movie that is available on Disney Plus. Story of Italian mer people, basically. It's got mer people and probably really good Italian food. I'm sold. I'm there. So that will be our topic for Full Fat Spoiler Chat next week. Watch it if you want to talk about it and you like Pixar stuff, because who doesn't? And then, of course, in the middle of that, Tuesday, we'll have Nerd Week Live. We'll be talking about all sorts of nerd news. A couple of things already dropped, even though the show was just a couple of days ago. Interesting nerd stuff to be talked about at that time. We, of course, as Manny said at the beginning of the show, we do have a Patreon. It's on your screen right there, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Please check it out. If you want to support us, we'd love to have you do so. Just a couple of low-dollar tiers. We're basically just out there so that you can help us go to cons, make more videos, do more fun stuff to show you on YouTube, on our website, etc. So with that, let's get some goodbyes. Let's see. I don't think you plugged anything, Greg, did you?
No, not per se. Well, if you're in New Hampshire,
Well,
and you want to come
Fisher
to the
Cats
ballpark
thing,
tomorrow
yeah.
night, and see some cosplay in the wild, as it were. But if anybody's been on here before, you may know I am one of the owners of Red Raven Studios, a creative photography studio a little south of Boston. We've done some amazing, creative, funky, weird, wild stuff. We had a great, long weekend shooting with frequent Nerd Caliber contributor Gogo Bell, Gogo Incognito, who is up here to visit. And if you've got an idea for something interesting, something weird, something you didn't think you could do that requires a set, some photographers, a lot of lights, a lot of set dressing, give us a call. Red Raven Studios, pretty much on all the usual spots.
Cool. Manny.
Please continue to support Nerd Caliber. Again, Patreon, super chat and merchandise. But even just a nice comment also wouldn't be so bad, and it's free.
Exactly. And for me, Rodney Brown, thank you very much for joining us. We'll hope to see you at one of the upcoming shows. Please do stay safe for those people out in the West who are still suffering through this crazy heat wave. Really, please stay safe. Get yourself somewhere where there's some air conditioning, if you can. And New York just crossed the 70% barrier, which means that the entire Northeast, all the states in the Northeast are 70% or above. Shout out to Vermont for hitting 80 when it comes to vaccinations, fully vaccinated. So please, folks, get your vaccinations. Yeah, that's all there is to it. And that means we get to see some of you folks at cons coming up. So yay! We've just started, thank God, to reapplying to cons again. So hopefully we'll see you at a con coming up pretty soon. But in the meantime, we'll see you next week at one of our shows.